Welcome back to Murder with the Misses. I'm Darren.
And I'm Amy. And today we're going to tell you about Marvin Gaye.
Don't forget to smash that like button. Check out the description for the links of all of our podcast platforms, CashApp, and Buy Me a Coffee. Like, share, subscribe, and don't forget to tell your friends. Do not forget to tell your friends. How's it going, everybody?
Hi.
We was sick last week. Everybody had the flu.
Yes.
And I do not wish that on my worst enemy.
No, it's terrible.
Every muscle and bone in my body ached.
Yes.
For a week straight.
Yes. Worse than usual.
Yeah. And I mean, it was horrible. It was like getting up like every, 3 hours, taking a hot shower just to ease the pain.
Yeah, he took a lot of showers.
Good night. I ain't never been so clean in my life.
It's so fresh and so clean.
But anyway.
So yeah, don't come for me on this one. This was meant to be our April Fool's Day episode. But since we had the flu, we didn't get to post anything last week.
It just was not happening.
You didn't want to see that, I promise you.
No.
It was terrible.
Everybody got sick.
Yeah, so we appreciate your patience. And we're feeling much better. But now we're still a week behind. So I'm going to go ahead and do this one anyways. So just keep in mind that this was supposed to be for April Fool's Day. And who hasn't heard of this name? For anyone who don't quite remember who he was, you've probably heard one of his songs. Like I heard it through the grapevine, How Sweet It Is to Be Loved by You, You're All I Need to Get By, Ain't No Mountain High Enough.
Ooh.
I know. Or maybe some of his after dark stuff like Let's Get It On or Sexual Healing.
Every time I hear heard it through the grapevine, I automatically go to
California Raisins. 100%.
Yeah.
Now he had some bangers in his day. But sadly, as you will see too often with entertainers of any type, past demons don't magically disappear when you become famous. For some, that status and the financial aspects that go along with it can be an outlet to break chains. But for others, it just changes the way they deal with it in a darker way. And this is one of those stories. Marvin Gaye, without the E on the end, was a junior. He was born in 1939 in Washington, D.C., and at the time, his family lived in the Fairfax Apartments, which is a public housing project. He was one of 5 kids that his parents would have. His mom, Alberta, was a domestic worker, and his dad was something else. He was a Pentecostal minister, and he was very strict. He controlled where the kids could go, what they could do. The girls were not allowed to wear makeup. He picked what kind of music they were allowed to listen to, mostly gospel. Ironically, he controlled what the girls were allowed to wear while he was in there wearing Alberta's underwear and stockings.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well.
Yeah. Parents, am I right?
Weird.
He liked to cross-dress. Now, some reports, including from his family, say that he was very open about that, but some say he did it all at home. Either way, the neighborhood knew about it, and they made fun of the kids for it. So they're catching shit outside because of that. And then at home, they're dealing with Marvin Sr. and his physical punishments. It was just a lose-lose. Marvin said that living in that house with Sr. was like living with a king, an all-cruel, chargeable, cruel, and all-powerful king. Marvin's sisters say that for many years, Sr. subjected Marvin to brutal whippings from the time he was about 7 until he was in his teens. Alberta herself said, "My husband never wanted Marvin, and he never liked him. He used to say he didn't think he was really his child, but for some reason, he didn't love Marvin, and that's what's worse. He didn't want me to love Marvin either." Now, Marvin himself started singing in the church when he was about 4 or 5 years old, and Sr. would play the piano. He was in the glee club at school, and music was his outlet to help, deal with his home life. It was his passion. In 1961, he signed with Motown Records, and some reports say that the record company is the one who added the E to the end of Marvin's last name because it was just G-A-Y, and they changed it when he got famous to G-A-Y-E. But according to Marvin himself, he added the E. And one reason was that he was made fun of. So they would say things like, "Is Marvin gay?" And things like that. And back then that was it's detrimental today too, but back then it was, they thought it was acceptable to talk to people like that. but it bothered him. So they say he added that E to kind of distinguish and to also distinguish from his father. And that was going back to like his father being a cross-dresser, because his father would cross-dress. People would assume that Marvin was also maybe homosexual or had certain proclivities. The founder of Motown Records was Berry Gordy. And I mention that because in June of 1961, 24-year-old Marvin married Berry's 41-year-old sister, Anna. And then a couple of years later, on November 17th of 1965, Anna's 16-year-old niece had a baby boy. Marvin and Anna had no kids and couldn't have kids, so they adopted the baby and named him Marvin Gaye III. In a book by Michael Eric Dyson called Mercy, Mercy Me, he reveals that Marvin was actually the baby's biological father.
Was he?
Well, nothing was ever made public to confirm or deny whether he was biologically his or not. Everything says that Marvin III was his adopted son, but he always treated him like a biological child, and that's what's important in the end. And we'll pass right over the accusation of Marvin getting a 16-year-old pregnant, okay? And we'll talk about his professional life. Now, he's becoming more and more popular. In 1971, he released his What's Going On album, and he and Senior actually had a little upstep in their relationship. But don't get excited, though, because it didn't last long and it was never really that good. But they did seem to be getting along a little better. Marvin was always closer to Alberta, and then he became the successful one of the family, right? The breadwinner. So that really made Senior and his relationship way worse. Senior never approved of his singing career. Like, how dare you be successful? Because he was successful by singing secular music, which is anything that's not religious. So he had a big problem with that. Now, also in 1971, Motown changed and then released an album without Marvin's permission. So you can add that to the list of what happened between Marvin and Motown. It was called In Our Lifetime, and Marvin wanted a question mark at the end of that because he was literally questioning life at that time. But they thought that that was a little too much, so they took that off, changed a couple other things, and then released it, and Marvin was pissed. So they were really going at it. But by 1973, he was recording with a lot of people, including like Diana Ross. So he was very popular. Things were still working their way out, so he bought his parents a house in Arlington Heights in California. But at Marvin's home, things weren't so great. In 1975, Anna and Marvin were getting a divorce. Marvin would say, "There was a tremendous love between us and tremendous need for one another, but I couldn't be controlled. Not by a wife, not by a manager, not by a record company. I was born a ram and a rebel."
He is a rebel.
He's a rebel. Now, it happened that in the divorce, Marvin was ordered to pay alimony. And,
well,
yeah, it happens.
Okay.
But funds were kind of low at that time. You know, back then, record companies took all your money. They still do now, and people fight tooth and nail to keep their own stuff. So he ended up filing bankruptcy the next year in 1976. His divorce was finalized the next year in 77, and through that bankruptcy, they worked it out to where the alimony would be paid through what he made from the music. So that took care of that, right? So they're just going to take part of his money, kind of like garnishing your paycheck. They basically did that to pay his alimony and pay the IRS. Now, he would end up getting married that same year again, but this time he went the complete opposite direction, and he married a much younger woman named Janice, and they would go on to have 2 kids together. But just a couple of years later, in 1979, they too were divorcing. So now he's got 2 alimony payments he has to make each month. Yeah. Yeah. That's the price you pay for love, I guess.
Yeah.
At the beginning, it's all, we're going to be together forever. By the end, it's like, you got my check? So, yeah. But he had been hustling for years, trying to make this money. And he's also been struggling for years because the business side of things was not going very well in his favor. He had worked with a lot of people, and one that affected him the most was Tammy Terrell. She's the one that he sang Ain't No Mountain High Enough with. Now, she did pass away of a brain tumor in 1970. And then a couple of months after that, there were 4 students that were killed by the National Guard at Kent State University. So while these are 2 unrelated incidents, both affected Marvin pretty hard. Those close to him say that he stayed in his room for a long time. He started doing hard drugs. He couldn't sleep, and he couldn't stop crying. He had reportedly started experimenting with coke in the 60s. So by this point in the 70s, it turned into a full-blown addiction for him. And then he doubled down by getting into PCP, or angel dust. He was said to be going back and forth between doing drugs and reading scripture. So you have the drug use, 2 failed marriages. The IRS, they want $1 million in back taxes, which in today's money is like $3 million. And it was all too much. So he took off. In the early 80s, he went to London. And then he got an offer in Belgium. So he went there in 1981. And this was finally good for him.
Them waffles are probably pretty good for him.
Right. There's the untold story of Marvin Gaye and his delicious Belgian waffles.
Belgian waffles.
But in real life, he started exercising, he stopped doing drugs, and he started feeling better. And then came sexual healing.
Oh, yeah?
He'd been laying low for a while, and now he was back in the spotlight. He said that as a kid, he had always had music in his head, and he was trying to get that back. It had left him, so he was struggling to get it back. But he didn't release that album under Motown Records, even though he had been with them for 21 years at this point. Columbia Records had bought his contract in 1982. So what would end up being his last album, Midnight Love, was with Columbia. Now that he was with a new company with new music, they wanted him to do what is required of all entertainers: entertain the masses. They wanted him back on tour, and Marvin hated touring. It's a lot of pressure. The schedule's ridiculous. It's a lot of stress. So he came back to America and started his final tour at the Humphreys in San Diego. But to deal with all that stress and pressure, he also started using cocaine again.
Yeah, and he'd been doing so good.
He had been doing so good.
Yeah.
Midway through the tour, he alleged...
Sorry.
It's okay. Midway through the tour...
Still getting over all this stuff, Sonny.
Yeah. Midway through the tour, he alleged that someone had tried to kill him. So he became super paranoid. He wore a bulletproof vest until he was on stage. He hired extra bodyguards. He would only let his sister bring him water when he was on stage to make sure that it had been tampered with or poisoned. He would go places with his brother Frankie as kind of a body double because they both looked so similar to each other. And all this just was piling up. He would end up collapsing from exhaustion and have to be taken to the hospital. But he had to keep going anyways. Remember, there's a lot of people with their hands in his pockets right now. The money he made and royalties he got were paying the exes in the government, so the show must go on. Even though he knew it wasn't good for him, because he even said that going on tour might end him. And they'd have him, they'd like pat him on the back, they'd tell him what a good boy he was, and then ship him right back out on stage. So he really didn't have anybody there that was like, take a break. You're allowed to cancel your tour. You're allowed to take a break, cancel a show or two. Nobody was doing that. Everybody's like, dance monkey. And the tour ended in August of 1983. And Alberta was recovering from kidney surgery, so he went home to take care of her. And I say that, but he was actually just helping take care of her because this was a family home. His mom and dad lived there, his 2 sisters, and his brother and sister-in-law stayed in the guest house on the property, so they were all right there.
Well, everybody was together.
Everybody. It was a pretty decent-sized house, so, I mean, they had their space, but at the same time, that's everybody just hanging out.
Yeah.
And they had a house in Washington, D.C. too, because it was reported that Senior was on a business trip and staying in that Washington, D.C. house when Marvin got home from tour. But he did come back to California in December, so they were all right there together. And apparently things between Marvin and Senior didn't take long to blow up. The growing conflict was too much. And Jean and Ziola, left the house not too long after Senior got home. These are Marvin's sisters. For 6 months, the 2 men tried to stay away from each other. And this, like I said, is a decent-sized house, but it's not that damn big. So there's altercations happening. They keep running into each other and things keep coming up. And there was a time that Senior had actually called the cops. Excuse me. Same here.
Yeah.
Senior had actually called the cops to make them kick Marvin out of the house. And he did leave, and he went to stay with one of his sisters, but he did go back because he said, after all, I have just one father. I want to make peace with him. Now, depending on how you look at what's about to happen, Marvin either made a poor choice or a calculated choice when giving his father a Christmas present. He gave Senior a Smith & Wesson .38 special pistol to protect himself against intruders.
My goodness.
So I want you to keep that in mind.
All right.
Yes, and I think we'll take a break so I can get a drink.
Okay. Well, we're going to take a quick break to stick with us. We're going to hear from a word from our sponsors. I'm going to get these words out.
Words are hard.
Just stick with us just for a second.
Do you or someone you know live in an apartment community? Are you balling on a budget? Make your money work for you.
Some apartments don't even offer a washer and dryer included in the lease. If you want that life, you need to contact My Laundry Solutions.
They service areas in Oklahoma, Missouri, and Texas. Their newest location is in Fort Worth, with more locations opening in Texas in 2025 and 2026. Check the website for locations near you. There's no credit check. Every contract includes free local service. They professionally install, and your account is available 24/7 online. Go to your leasing office, go to mylaundrysolutions.com, or call 800-535-4411.
Stop wasting your hard-earned money at the laundromat and give My Laundry Solutions a call today.
My Laundry Solutions.
Give them a call today.
Yep. And if you guys are college students or anything like that, living in an apartment looking for washers and dryers, especially like in Lubbock, Texas, or any of you guys looking for something like that, go to their website, check them out. It's cheap, it's affordable.
And their website is very user-friendly.
Yep.
Yes.
So anyway, go check them out. It's good people.
Yes. Okay, so we left off with Marvin giving Senior a .38 special for Christmas.
Dun, dun, dun.
Yes. Friends would say that around this time, Marvin was still paranoid and talking an awful lot about death and suicide. He hardly even left his bedroom. He would do odd things like wear his shoes on the wrong feet or walk around wearing 3 coats. Just weird. And I believe it was March 29th of 1984 that he reportedly jumped out of a speeding sports car in an attempt to end it all, but he only ended up getting some bruises for his troubles. So,
Well, I mean, it doesn't sound like it was going very fast.
right, if it's a speeding sports car and you jump out.
Yeah. And you only get bruises.
Right. So,
I mean,
doesn't sound like it was going very fast. Jean would say that this made her believe there was no doubt that Marvin wanted to die and that he couldn't take it anymore. Back at the house, Senior and Alberta were starting up a days-long argument about some insurance policy letter. And I mean, other things had made their way into the fight, of course. You start fighting about one thing and then you're going to throw in everything. But the insurance paper was the main focus. On March 31st, the fight came into Marvin's bedroom. So you had Marvin's room, Alberta's room was in the middle, and then Senior's was on the other side. So they're literally in a line.
yeah.
So they end up coming into Marvin's bedroom and arguing, and Marvin defended his mom and told Senior to leave her alone. The grown-up that he is, Senior left the bedroom, but only to go around the house just yelling about this insurance paper. And not for a little while either. He kept it up for the rest of the night. So the next day, which is April Fool's Day of 1984, Frankie's wife Irene brought Alberta something to eat. Alberta told her to give it to Marvin. He hadn't eaten in days, and he wasn't doing very good. Now this pissed Senior off. Senior yelled about that damn insurance letter again, just yelling at Alberta over and over. Marvin finally busted out in his maroon bathrobe and yells down to Senior that if he has something to say, do it face to face. Do it in person. Don't just yell through the house. Now, Senior doesn't take too kindly to being told what to do, so he just kept it up. At some point, Marvin tells him, don't come in my room, because he said, you better not come in my room. And so Senior did exactly that. He came in his room. So.
Well, you know, I mean, that sounds like, you know, Senior was just, you know, was just wanting to fight about anything.
Anything.
You know what I mean?
Anything. He was just irritated, it sounds like, frustrated. And things really just got out of hand. So Marvin jumped out of bed and told Senior to leave his room, which he did not, of course. So Marvin pushed him out of the room into the hallway and was punching and kicking him. Now, this is Alberta's version of events. Senior made his way to his bedroom, all the while with Marvin brutally kicking him. Eventually, Alberta was able to separate the men and Marvin went back to his room. At 12:38, Senior came out of his bedroom with that .38 special that Marvin had given him for Christmas, and he shot Marvin directly in the heart. Alberta would later tell the police, "I was standing about 8 feet away from Marvin when my husband came to the door of the bedroom with his pistol. My husband didn't say anything. He just pointed the gun at Marvin. I screamed, but it was very quick. He, my husband, shot and Marvin screamed. I tried to run. Marvin slid down to the floor just after the first shot."
The first shot.
Mm-hmm.
So he shot more than once?
Yes.
Wow.
In a 2018 episode of Autopsy: The Last Hours of, forensic pathologist Michael Hunter says he believes that Marvin was actually initially shot in the left shoulder by Senior while they were standing about 2 feet from each other, and that the shot penetrated the left shoulder just below the clavicle and exited his back without causing any serious injury. He would have fallen down after he was shot, and that's when Senior fatally shot him in the chest. So that's why there was such a weird trajectory when they looked at the path of the bullet, because the bullet traveled diagonally down through the heart, the lung, the diaphragm, the liver, and the kidney, finally stopping in the left side of his torso. So he definitely has a downward angle. If they were standing directly in front of each other, it wouldn't have been like that. Yeah. So Hunter said that the direction of the bullet trajectory suggests that Marvin was positioned toward his father and that his father was likely to have been moving away at the time that he made that shot. Now remember that Marvin's brother Frankie and his wife Irene live in the guest house, so they hear the shot. They hear the first one. Now the first one, they thought it was a car that backfired. Irene was convinced, "Did you hear that gunshot? That sounded like a gunshot." But Frankie was like, "No, we're right next to the freeway, so it was probably just a car that backfired."
Yeah.
But then they heard Alberta screaming. So they run outside and Alberta runs into Irene's arms, crying and screaming, "He shot Marvin. He's killed my boy." Frankie headed into the house. He's creeping up the stairs and down the hallway because he doesn't know where Senior or that gun is at. But he needed to get to Marvin. He finds Marvin in his room and he's bleeding very badly. But according to Frankie, he was still alive. He held Marvin while they waited for an ambulance, and he said Marvin was barely able to speak above a whisper, but said, "I got what I wanted. I couldn't do it myself, so I had him do it. It's good. I ran my race. There's no more left in me." Now, after the cops got there, they wouldn't go into the house. So Irene went in, and she went to Senior's bedroom and asked him where the gun was. And he wouldn't tell her. He was kind of in a daze, like he wasn't realizing what was going on. He wasn't acknowledging anything. It was just, he was in the zone. So she started searching for it while Senior made his way out to sit on the front porch. She found it under his pillow on his bed, and she came outside and dropped it in the yard, and Senior was arrested.
Wow. This story sucks.
I know. I know. They transported Marvin to California Hospital Medical Center, and at approximately 1:01 p.m., he was pronounced dead on arrival. Senior told the police that he was scared that something would happen to him, and he only shot in self-defense. He said he didn't know that the gun had real bullets in it. He thought that they were either blanks or BBs. He didn't cry. No, I'm sorry, he did. He did cry when they told him that Marvin had died from his injuries. But when they asked him if he loved his son, he reportedly said in a soft voice, "Let's say I didn't dislike him." Wow. Obviously, news stations reported his sudden death, but a lot of people thought it was a hoax or an April Fool's Day prank. But it wasn't. The Prince of Soul, the Prince of Motown, was dead. Marvin's funeral was on April 5th at Forest Lawn Memorial Park in Glendale. Over 10,000 people were there. Smokey Robinson and Dick Gregory gave eulogies. Stevie Wonder sang. He was even given a burial plot, but the family had him cremated instead. Some of his ashes were spread near the Pacific Ocean, and then Marvin III and Anna, his first wife, kept some for themselves. Now, by law, his estate was split equally between the 3 kids. At the time, the oldest was Marvin III, and he was only 17. Marvin had still been paying off all those debts, too, so there really wasn't much for them to split up. But the managers of his estate did things the right way, and the debts would eventually get paid, and money would actually start coming in again to the estate.
Well, they were smart about it.
They were very smart about it, yeah, because royalties are going to keep coming in, so you still got to manage what's coming in, and they apparently did a really good job. And one of the biggest things that happened to help the estate.
Well, because you got to think, like when did the California Raisins come out?
That was in the 80s. I remember being a California Raisin for Halloween.
So this was after he died?
It would have been around the time he died, yeah. Sometime around in there.
So, they was getting royalties from the California Raisins, and they was their own group on top of that. They was under contract themselves, which is kind of weird, but,
It's like the Gorillas. They're not a real band. They're AI or whatever.
But
cartoons.
But that's what I'm saying. So, he was probably getting royalties off of that with,
all along with his music.
Because
he was an actor at some point.
If you look it up, the California Raisins was actually ranked like number 1
of course they
on
were.
the charts.
Of course they were.
Heard it through grapevine and stuff. I remember watching them as a kid and stuff and everything. I know.
Like I said, I was a California Raisin for like 2 or 3 years straight.
I remember a lot of kids in like the 3rd grade.
That was me.
Like whenever I was in 3rd grade, I remember a lot of kids came to school as California Raisins.
That was me. Yeah.
Yep.
I was one of those.
And I was,
raisins.
I was about this much jealous. I was pretty jealous.
You could have borrowed my outfit.
I was pretty jealous about it.
Back then, they would parade you through the other classes. Like now, I think they actually take them out trick-or-treating to local businesses. But back in our day, they just each class would parade through the other classes in their building to show off their costumes. And every time I was on it, like doing the dance.
Yeah.
All the way through the classroom.
Yeah. I was like, man, look at all these cool California Raisins. And what did I be? A ninja.
Hey, ninjas are cool. But I think we just found out the first time you fell in love with me.
Yeah, maybe. Because that's probably who I seen. I see a bunch of California Raisins.
Just me. Anyways.
It all adds up.
It does. It all comes together.
Yeah.
But one of the biggest things to happen to the estate didn't come until 2013. So do you remember the song Blurred Lines with Robin Thicke, T.I., and Pharrell?
Mm-hmm.
Big hit, right? But they went to court to have them say that they did not steal parts of that song from Marvin's song, Got to Give It Up. So go on and give them a Google if you want, if you're curious. It'll take you about 10 seconds, a lot less, to realize why this was an issue.
And the other thing is, we can't play this song on there because copyrighted and all that stuff, and they'll take the freaking video down.
Right.
We're already getting, the fact checkers on Facebook taking bullshit down and everything just because of
pictures.
They don't like our pictures that are not like what they say that they are. So there's no point in arguing.
No.
So
just give them a Google. You got to Give It Up by Marvin Gaye and then Blurred Lines by Robin Thicke. So if you just look those two up and listen, like the first 5 seconds, you're going to be like, yep, I know why they went to court. Now at that time, his kids had the rights to his recordings and the estate had the rights to his performances. So they could not play the songs in court. So see, they couldn't even play them in court.
Yeah.
And I am and never have been a recording artist. So that's probably why I just don't understand why they couldn't just give permission. I mean, the kids and the estate are in this lawsuit. So couldn't they just say, yeah, play it? But I'm sure there's a good reason they didn't. But this meant that the court had to rely on sheet music and experts to compare the two songs side by side. And they would end up agreeing with the Gaye family and awarding them $7.4 million in 2015. So
that made way more off. They made way more off of that song than that,
Plus, Blurred Lines made a lot more money off that song than $7 million.
Yeah.
But they could only take money from certain aspects of it, not like the touring or the performance of it because that's their own. But they could do it off the actual music.
So
that's
whenever
what
they
did.
won, so when they won
Mm-hmm.
this, did they have to take that off their?
No.
So they was able to use it after that?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. They were still able to use it. This
well,
was
that's
just
good. At least then after that, they could still make their money off of it.
Right.
You know?
Right.
So
Everybody.
it takes a little while to recoup from it, but at least you can.
100%. That was a huge song that made, I'm guaranteeing it made a lot of money.
Yeah.
But let's talk about Senior now. So we've got the estate. It's all taken care of. Everybody's paid. Everybody's good. Now, Senior, Marvin's siblings had actually come to the conclusion that this was more of a premeditated suicide on Marvin's part. Gene said that Senior had said before that if Marvin ever touched him, he'd kill him. So the whole family knew if any of the kids tried to lay a hand on him, even though he was beating them, that he would kill them. I brought you in, I'll take you out, that kind of situation. She later said that Marvin forcing Senior to kill him accomplished 3 things. He brought relief to Mother by finally getting her husband out of her life. That's how they refer to Alberta. And he punished Father, which is how they refer to Senior, by making certain that the rest of his life would be miserable. And he put himself out of his own misery. She said, my brother knew exactly what he was doing.
They say he really thought this out, huh?
Yeah. They're saying this was a big plan.
Wow.
A big plan.
He had a lot on his mind then.
He was in a bad place at the time.
Well, if that's true.
If it's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
which it's never really been
that's just like
disputed.
That's all hearsay, and
it is, but it's coming from his family, the people who are closest to him. They have never disputed what this was.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they believe this is what happened.
Basically, that's between them and and the man upstairs.
That's right. That's right. Now, Senior was held at LA County Jail on a $100,000 bond. He maintained that he didn't mean to do it. And he did get a checkup at the County USC Medical Center, and they found a benign tumor at the base of his brain. It was removed on May 17th of 1984, so that's literally a month and a half after the shooting. A report in June showed 2 psychiatric evaluations, and he was found to be competent enough to stand trial. His bond would be reduced to $30,000, and shockingly, Alberta bailed him out. It's shocking because just 2 days before she bailed him out, she'd actually filed for divorce, citing that they had officially been separated since the day he shot their son. So she's divorcing him, but then she still is the one who gets him out of jail, and they stand by him. It seems that the lawyers misread the coroner's report, allegedly. They say that Marvin had cocaine and PCP in his system at the time of his death, and the judge determined that PCP can provoke violence. Yes, it can. But when it was brought up later that it was a mistake, that there actually wasn't PCP in Marvin's system, the judge said that it wasn't a major factor in his decision anyways, so it didn't matter. The fact that he did have drugs in his system, the fact that Senior had injuries showing that there had been a physical altercation, there was just things that were leading to Senior's story, and so they offered him a plea deal, and he took it. On September 20th of 1984, he pled no contest to voluntary manslaughter. So,
oh, this is kind of tough.
Yeah, it's pretty tough. But during the sentencing hearing, Senior said, if I could bring him back, I would. I was afraid of him. I thought I was going to get hurt. I didn't know what was going to happen. I'm really sorry for everything that happened. I loved him. I wish he would step through those doors right now. I'm paying the price now.
After he shot him, he said he didn't
he said, I didn't dislike him.
I didn't dislike him. But now at sentencing, he's saying, now he loves him. So he went his whole life.
Yeah, hating him,
beating him, and everything else. And then he chose to point that gun.
He did.
And pull that trigger.
He did.
And now he's going to say,
I love him.
Oh, well, poor old me.
Yes, I'm paying the price now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I ain't got my son no more. Well, no shit.
Yeah. But he could have got the phone and called the cops. He could have went outside and got Frankie from the guest house. Like there's all kinds of things he could have done.
Honestly, he should have just manned the fuck up and just been like, give me your worst.
What the hell?
I mean, seriously, give me, you know what I mean? I've been like, just do your worst. Because, I mean, if I feel remorse after something that I physically done, if I did that and everything, and then I felt remorse afterwards, I felt bad about it or whatever, it's too late.
Right. It's done.
So I'd be like, do your worst. I did an awful fucking thing. Do your worst.
Yeah, I did it.
Give me the max. Give me whatever you think fits.
Right. Well, they did, and you're about to get mad again.
Okay.
So you gotta wonder if him saying all this is.
So now I'm sitting there ranting and everything, and he actually did something. My bad.
No, you're good. You're on the right. Yeah.
Okay.
No, so you have to wonder, is this him saying now that he loves him so much and everything, is this self-preservation, or did he actually think about what he did and was like, I'm so sorry. I really did love him. I just couldn't see it at the time. I don't know. Either way, he was sentenced to a 6-year suspended sentence.
That's bullshit.
And 5 years probation.
No, not good enough.
Yeah. That's what he got.
Yeah, not good enough.
Yes. Now, as you probably already know or assumed, there were memorials for Marvin.
Because that's not suffering for what you did.
No, he did not.
That's not paying the price for what you did.
No. No, it's not.
I don't care if you did feel bad about it afterwards. That's no justice.
No.
I don't care if he did have drugs in his system or whatever. He's still human.
They both had problems.
Whatever.
Yeah, they both had them.
Whatever. Go ahead.
So there were memorials for Marvin. There were tributes. VH1 listed Marvin's death as as number 8 on the list of most shocking moments in rock and roll. And there's an annual Marvin Gaye Day celebration on his birthday every year in Washington, D.C. That actually started before he passed away. In 1986, Alberta founded the Marvin P. Gaye Jr. Memorial Foundation, which is dedicated to those suffering from drug abuse and alcoholism. It opened a day after she died of complications from bone cancer in May of 1987. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the day after she died is when the foundation opened. That was so sad. In 1990, Marvin was given a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. They had been petitioning for it since he died. And one of the most profound letters that they received was actually written by Eddie Murphy, because he was a longtime fan of Marvin Gaye. In 2006, an old park that Marvin used to go to as a teenager was renamed Marvin Gaye Park. And in 2009, a street in Washington, D.C. was named Marvin Gaye Way. And that is the story of Marvin Gaye. We also listen to his music today. It's in the movies, it's on TV, and he just had a very tragic story to go behind it.
Yeah, you hear his music everywhere.
Everywhere. That's why at the beginning, I'm like, I really would find it hard pressed for even the younger generation to not know who Marvin Gaye was, because his songs are still everywhere. Everywhere.
Yeah.
That was a big deal. But that was it. So if you like our content, please like, share, subscribe. Hit that notification bell so you know when a new episode drops. If you'd like to contribute, we have CashApp at #MWTMPod.
Or we have Buy Me a Coffee at buymeacoffee.com/MWTM.
Yes.
So that's it for this one.
Yep.
So catch us up on the next one, which will be Friday.
Yes.
Yes, we will have 2 episodes this week.
I promise.
Yep. Because we are recording them today.
Yes.
So.
Yeah, just in case something happens.
We're getting caught up this weekend.
Yes, we are.
Because we don't want this to happen again.
No, we're so sorry. So sorry.
So, guys, don't forget to tell your friends.
Tell them all.
Tell everybody you know.
Tell your mama.
And most of all, we're looking for subscribers. Yeah. So, if you guys like our content and you guys want to
hear more,
yeah, share our content with your friends and tell them to come in, like, share, subscribe, and,
we'll tell them stories.
Yeah. We'll tell them stories. We'll try to do the best we can, but I'll put up the links where most of our stuff are, and we'll see you guys next time.
Bye.